Okay, good evening. Today is Tuesday, October 11th, 2022. We're convened at the Provo City School District Board of Education. We're meeting at 280 West, 940 North in Provo, Utah. The time is 5:10 p.m. We will begin with a roll call. Melanie Hall, Board President.
Rebecca Nielsen, Board Vice President.
Jennifer Partridge, Board Member.
Dave Bryson, Board Member.
Gina Hales, Board Member.
McKay Jensen, Board Member.
Terry McCabe, Board Member.
Derek Anderson, Business Administrator.
Keith Rachel, Superintendent.
Is there a motion to convene?
I move that we convene the study session.
Thank you, Jennifer. All right, next we're going to turn the time over to Derek Anderson for a construction update.
All right, there is, I'm going to present really quick. Come on, connect. 8336. Alright, so what you've got here is this is a video of the Wasatch property line, okay, and so what you can see here is that excavation that is underway, right? What you've got right here is that canal. That's what that is. It's still there. We're still working on it. What the Santiago's and the district have agreed in all respects. The one thing that is holding things up right now is the Santiago's don't actually own that road. So they have to get an easement through the property owner that is a utility easement. and so that is kind of the final thing that is holding this up. Now the other entity that owns the road, okay, is planning on putting a development down here, and they want the easements that are currently going through all of that to go away because they want to develop it. And so they're either going to develop it, they would have to move the line there anyways or do something coming off of it. So it's going to work out. It's just this final little piece that's going on with it. But you can see here there's a lot of excavation based off of prior conversations to get this site to be ready for building that school. So, and that's just currently what's going on, and that's going to be going on for the next couple months. So this one is shoreline, okay? So this starts back. Whoa! Did you disconnect or did you disconnect me? That was weird. I've never seen that.
I'm just going to stay out until you're done.
Okay.
Sorry, I started typing. But
You're okay. You're okay. There we go. So this is shoreline, and this is from the south looking north on the end of the valley. So we actually, down here, you see this fence? All of this down here, we actually still own that, and it is part of our project. But this all here is that wetlands thing that we're working through, okay? And then all that over here, though, is our actual property line. And then what the drone is going to do is fly forward and then come and pan this other side. And so the wetlands thing, there was a couple emails that actually came today. One was from the gentleman, the Army Corps of Engineer. They got another form that they needed filled out and sent to them. So the communication is ongoing. The message of not a big problem, this will go away, is still the same. They have not told us anything yet that is different. So this is going to be the road that's going to come through and connect on down. This is also where we're working with the city and allowing them to connect that storm drain line through down south, and which will allow us to eliminate our detention basins. What you see here is the locker rooms, along with like the cafetorium and the auditorium, and that's kind of what you see here on this
So these are just like footings.
Right now, you can
Yep,
see
and
the
so-
auditorium right there.
Yep, so you see, these are mainly footings right here. So these are all footings that are all going in. The same here with the auditorium. This is already concrete flat work, and you can see rebar and pipe all coming out of here. So they've already dug out all of that. So as you come up, I mean, there a lot of footings are going in right now for this property.
Any problems with concrete for this site?
No issues with concrete right now.
This is gonna be main entrance and office and whatever, right?
Correct,
And then
correct. The
here's gonna be
classrooms and,
classrooms.
correct.
It's very exciting.
So there's a lot of work that's being done over there, and it's moving quickly, so, which is really nice.
I thought the parking lot was supposed to be this way and not this way.
So the way the parking lot is gonna be, let me see if I can come back here, back up a little bit. From this west, there we go, right here, that's kind of, I'm gonna pause that. So the way you're gonna have parking is there's gonna be parking along this front right here. This road is getting widened. We're helping the city and the neighborhood and everybody, and pretty much saying, hey, look, we'll use our property to widen the road and
Well, you
make this
better.
happen.
It's an alley right now.
It isn't, pretty much an alley. It is-
One car.
Yeah, that's correct. And so we're using our property to widen and make it pretty much a roadway that will connect through to the other side when it's all said and done. But there will be parking along this main road right here, but there will also be parking on that far side also. So the
The
parking
east
lot,
side,
yeah,
yeah.
that you're currently seeing there, that will still be there.
So the parking lot that was there for like the baseball field and whatnot is still currently there.
Correct.
And that'll-
Yeah, so
That'll
that right
still-
there, it looks like
Closer
it's
to
going this way.
The Head Start.
Oh, they turned it around,
Yeah,
so
now you're
they've
going right.
blown too much. Right there. So that
Ah, okay.
parking lot, bingo. So here is the construction trailer and the Head Start. This parking lot will still be there from what my understanding. Okay.
Are they expanding that parking lot too? Or
That I don't know off the top of my head.
The last time I was
From where I remember, they were
like
getting
where
that
there's
bigger.
the trucks right now, there was more trucks.
So that is Shoreline. Now Temp View. So this is Temp View. So Temp View, pause, I'll pause that right there. So this right here is the academic wing, okay? Third floor, you can see is going up really well. All of this is getting ready for concrete. This is gonna be kind of the commons area that will connect and walkway through over to the admin, the auditorium, things like that, okay?
Remind me, is that the academic wing still that's going in the center right there where the yellow is above?
Right here,
Yeah, like.
I believe there's gonna be some more
More
actual.
classrooms on all three
Kind of where
levels,
that
yeah,
one
level.
wall's
Yes,
hanging out.
so this is gonna be
Okay.
the walkway here, right through here, and then the commons area is out over here. This
Okay.
here, I believe, is classroom space for something.
And then the media center's going on the second floor, right where those beams are, right?
That one
The
I
right
don't
of
have
the
off the top of my
screen?
head, I
Okay.
didn't know. But, so and what I'm gonna show you here though is, so you see that metal on the third floor? Boom, right there. That's what I wanna show you. So this metal is what the flooring is, where they just pour the concrete right on top of that. And there's rebar all through that. You can see down here, that's them breaking out all that concrete in there, okay? And it's just still ongoing. And they're gonna
That's
do
kind
that.
of, they're still working on it, right?
Yep.
We're still on schedule even though they're doing that?
We are still on schedule.
That was
Tons of
amazing.
confidence.
We are still on schedule. They've not given, here's what they've told us. We're still on schedule, but it is literally a day-for-day delay right now. So if there are any more delays, it's pretty much a day-for-day. They're trying, that's why they're pushing right now.
They're not ahead, they're on the.
They're on the defense, and that's partially why, actually, I'm gonna back up just a second so I can show you, well, you can't really see it from here, but one part of this project is over here, that cell tower and all of the stadium isn't scheduled to be done or started until pretty much the summer. We've found a window where they're hoping to make up some time and get started on that pretty much right now. Okay, and so we've been working through that. I communicated with Crown Castle again last week, and they gave me an update that everything is still moving forward to move that off site here fairly soon. They've, I think, now had 3 meetings on moving that over to the new site, and so they're just waiting on a couple final things before they can really nail it down and then move it and get out of the way.
Who's Crown Castle?
They're the ones that own the lease
On the cell tower.
on the cell tower.
And it
Do you
remind
know
me-
where the new,
Yeah, where's it
new
going?
cell tower's going?
So that I don't know for certain because it's not on our property. They are telling us they're working with the city to move it over to the park right across the street, kitty corner.
The new one that they're building?
Correct. So they just right on that Canyon Road, or not Canyon Road. Well, it spans from Canyon Road to Timpview. And it's,
Yeah.
So
The one
this
that's
way
north,
from the
north
school.
of
North.
yeah, it's north of
North
Timp.
west?
Yeah.
Bingo.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it's not gonna be on our property at all?
Correct. Yeah.
And there's now Timpview student crossing guards.
Really?
And they are very aggressive. They are.
I need to drive up there then.
Yeah, they stop everyone.
How did that happen? I haven't
don't
heard
know,
anything about that.
They're just wearing vests, they don't even have stop signs, they just get
So-
out of the way, stop everyone.
Oh.
Here's that
They have
entrance
rooms,
coming out
they
the
can go
back of
both
the
sides.
academic
We have some
wing.
liability.
They have access to the seminary.
If they're hired by the city now.
I don't think they're hired by they just have vests.
So you can see here more. This is the mechanical update that we had pictures of last time. This is that commons area that we've discussed. So the project is moving forward still within all respects in all areas. That one issue is just going to be one of those things that they have to keep working through. The locker rooms, there has been a hiccup with the locker rooms. Okay, here's what's gone on: is they poured the concrete in the locker rooms,
The new one?
the new ones. But what happened was so concrete is all about the drying time. Okay. And it's all about how it cures, and
Or
I
it's about
that's
to fly over this area?
oh hey, there we go. So bingo. So this right here is all coming out, and that's moving. So the plan is to get started on this to make up for some lost time.
So the locker room
The
in
locker
that
room.
building
So
here.
this
The locker
bingo.
room,
So this
yeah.
locker room right here in the new wing. Okay, I'm gonna pause right here. The locker room in the wing here.
Looks great.
What they found is there were, well, this is a theory from their standpoint, is they went in and they started polishing the floor, and what happened was is as they were polishing the concrete, all of a sudden the polisher would start digging into the concrete, and it was just like soft. And so there's been a couple of the things that we've discussed, okay? And so what they went and did is they cored samples to see, is there a difference in the mixture? What caused this? And here's all what they are thinking of is the ground temperature had hot spots, okay? And so when concrete is all about heat, okay? The hotter it is, the faster it cures and dries. And the faster it cures and dries, the more brittle and weak it is, okay? And so what they're thinking is there's these spots that are cured really fast because of a hot spot, and they're soft, and they can't polish them. So the discussion has been, do we rip it out and re-pour it? And that's been their plan, is to go through and rip it out and re-pour it.
And this is a them problem, right?
This is an
Yeah.
improv, absolutely, 100%. But one of the things that we're considering is doing a rubberized coating over it for cleats. Because your athletics go in, all professional teams already do this. They put rubberized coating on all their athletic floors because while you're walking in cleats, it's very easy to slip and fall and I mean, if you've walked in cleats and concrete, you know how slippery it is. So they make specialized rubberized coatings for this, and they're looking at what is the lifetime wear of it, so there is a product that they use in professional sports teams, and it has like a guaranteed never fail, and they're saying that they would be willing to cover that at 100% if we went that route.
What's the safety difference?
So pretty much the safety difference from walking on it is you're in a locker room. So
No, I just mean you have
Well, like,
that
is your
concrete floor.
Floor underneath can deteriorate and go bad in 10 years.
So
Because it's soft.
it's not soft to the point where you're going to snap it or break it. It's just you can't polish it. So it's still hard floor. It's not like it's dirt or you're crumbling. It's still hard and concrete. It's just if you were to try
can't
to,
get the finish that they want.
bingo, you can't get a finish that you want. So it's either rip it out and then redo it just to try to get the finish that you want
So
on
the
it.
rubber coating would help hold it together?
It would hold it together, provide a protective layer over it, and be safer for our students.
And it's not so soft that we're gonna have to tear it out and replace it anyways in
And they're what I'm hearing is it's like got a guaranteed never fail kind of a deal. It's
the
it's
rubber
very
does, but the concrete?
and and that's where I would have a conversation
I
with the
would want
concrete.
second opinion, make sure
Correct.
we're doing it right.
Absolutely correct. So there's current discussion going on around that and options. There's nothing been finalized yet, but that absolutely happened within
So
this last little bit.
What's the cleaning of the rubber flooring? Because I don't want these kids getting MRSA if they're walking barefoot.
It's great feedback. Great feedback. That's something we'll have to consider in terms of is there any special cleaning equipment that would be required for it? Is there that great feedback?
Does this postpone people moving into this building? Because they know they were going to move into this area over this coming weekend.
That's correct. And so as of right now, this isn't going to hamper any kind of moving. It's not going to impact our occupancy, right? The cities and the fire marshals will sign off on occupancy. That they don't have an issue with that. That's not an occupancy issue. So it's not going to hold that up. We could still get occupancy and move forward if we want to.
So the rubber floor thing would just be put in late? Or-
Correct. On top
Well,
of it.
and they can move the
Unless-
classrooms in.
And there's
and
other
the
ones, so
locker
there's multiple options. There's one coating, the rubberized coating that you can take up and replace. Other one that's like a permanent product on it, from what I'm hearing. So that they're looking at options. They're still waiting on information to be able to actually make an informed decision. So that's
The onus should be on them that if it's different, it should be an upgrade.
Correct.
They have to convince us that it's an upgrade.
Correct.
Otherwise, we need to go back to the original.
And is this something that
Completely
our
agree.
custodians are going to know how to take care of?
And when we have the everything on the table of what they're proposing, I'll ask the question of are you going to require any specialized equipment for cleaning that? Because if it requires specialized equipment or a cleaning specialized process, then that makes it a more difficult pill to swallow. But they would have to come in and they would rip it out and re-pour it, like say over the Christmas or winter break. There we go. So that would be if we have them re-pour it when they plan on doing that.
Derek, do you want to clarify the move in? I'm sure you were planning to do that anyway.
So
What we talked about yesterday.
I wasn't planning on talking about it yet.
Okay, never mind.
Just because the contractor's still working through some things on it, and they want to make sure that everybody stays there, and so that way things get finished. So there's just some conversation going on about this one right now. That Monday, at that point in time, our construction team is saying, okay, fine, now go ahead and please talk about it. It's not something that, and I'm happy to discuss it on an individual basis. It's just something that we can't have public yet. So is that they've asked us for.
Right.
My apologies.
It's okay.
Can we put those YouTube videos up?
Yeah,
So,
those are really cool.
here's one of the things that I am working on.
No, can we have those on like board
Available.
docs, so that,
Yes.
On the website.
Absolutely on the
On the
website.
website,
Well,
yeah.
so one of the things I'm working on, let me see if I can pull this up and actually have it fairly quickly. This right here. So we are in the process, that's not what I wanted to do. We are in the process of putting on the website a construction page, which will have information about our projects, the cost per square foot, video footage, pictures, things like that. So it's in process. We're just gathering all of the data. Our communications team, our IT team have done great work in doing what we've asked them to do. The reason it's not up is it's on the finance department. We just haven't been able to pull everything together. So
Just out of quick curiosity, was that our drone footage or was that the construction company?
that's construction companies.
It could currently go on the maintenance and facilities page.
For the
Just the drone footage, I think the public would love to see that.
So, and I was hoping to have it published for board meeting. That was the goal. Just, it didn't happen. So, is there any other questions with construction that the board has?
all right, thank you, Derek.
Okay.
Right, next, I'm going to turn the time over to Jason Cox, who's going to talk about LEA specific licenses.
I apologize. That's fine. So, good afternoon. I wanted to think through that out loud for a minute. We have shared with you a document that has our LEA-specific licenses for this year. There's a request for board approval each year of the LEA licenses. What the LEA license is when someone has like a bachelor's degree but they'd like to get into teaching, so they've shifted directions and they're now working with us on getting their full licensure. You'll see that on that page, I believe there were about 27 of them, I believe, and 17 of those are new to the district this year. So those, the remaining ones are ongoing people, because it's a 3-year process, that 3 to 4 year, the state will give an exception to advance 1 more year, but we try to keep everybody to a 3-year process. So you're seeing the people who were on the list last year and have stayed with us to continue, and then you're also seeing the new people for this year specifically. And so in the board meeting later tonight, we'll ask for your approval of that group so we can send that information off to USBE.
So one question I have is 17 roughly, I can't remember, is that roughly like what we have normally every year, or is that?
Yeah, the last couple of years it's ranged between 15 and 9, I believe was the lowest, but it's kind of been, so 17 is not terribly out of range. And we did have a few people who are more specialized this year who retired in different areas, and that kind of drives why we often get the LEA licenses, is because we're trying to hire people in very specific areas, like mathematics, for example. So.
Is this just for people who don't have the qualifications, like for teaching, or does it also apply to a teacher who may be a certified teacher in one science field, but now we need them in another science or in history, and so they've moved departments? Do they have to go through this process?
So they do if they have, if their assignment is 50% or greater in their new assignment that they're not certified in, they do actually have to go through this process, and we submit them. But that group is not new to us, and they don't require the same approval through the state because they've already are licensed and are teaching for us in a current assignment, and we've asked them to teach something else. We do have a list of that group too that's separate of this. It's tab 1. Well, and I don't know if we shared both tabs. Tab 1, it has 6 people who
Okay,
are,
so that's not the list for this.
no. The approval list that has to go to USBE is just the complete group that was ongoing last year and is new this year. because that group that'll be doing what we talked about, the 50% or greater of their contract, that group changes pretty frequently. Often they don't go through the process of completing the full endorsement for that area. It might be a stopgap. A principal may need a help in an area for a year, and so they ask them to take that assignment. So with that group, again, USB kind of considers them a little differently because they're already licensed in an area, and we don't have anyone in our school district right now that it has an assignment for that is greater than 50%. So it's all 50% or less that they're doing that additional assignment that they're not licensed in.
And you do have to have a bachelor's degree, right, to even?
For the LEA specific, yes. There is a new way to go through licensure that doesn't require even a bachelor's degree. It's an AEL, but we haven't needed to do that yet. So.
And there's no more ARL, right?
No. Yeah. The state got rid of the ARL and changed that to a bunch of other letters, you know, AEL, LEA, you know, those kinds of things, so.
Attitude.
Yeah, I know, right?
And then these teachers get extra supports and things, right?
Yes. Yeah, if they go through our new teacher mentoring and all those kinds of things, they get quite a bit of extra support because it is something that's new to them in general, right? So we do a lot of things to try to support them in this, and specifically the first year, but on through the first 3 years. So.
Any further questions for Jason? All right, thank you, Jason.
Yeah, thank you.
All right, next we're going to have a policy review, and I'm going to turn the time over to Anne Marie Harrison.
Thank you. I have for you today 2 proposed policies. The first one is policy 4490. It's surveying and data collection. This is a new policy with the great intentions of trying to collect more feedback and data from individuals, as well as the ubiquitousness of SurveyMonkey, Google tools, and other things to give surveys. We're noting many more surveys being sent out by various parties within the district. And without wanting to put a damper on that, we have had a few instances where we've seen surveys that go out that say Provo City School District and have maybe spelling errors or some serious survey practice errors. And we've also seen the concern of a principal coming to a school saying, this principal said they did all this surveying, but there's no historical record of it. So with this policy, we ask that surveying, anyone wishing to do a survey in Provo School District registers it. Our Teaching and Learning's Director of Assessment, Dr. Ron Twitchell, drafted this. He would manage a registration site where people just give information about who they're surveying, for what reason, a time period. One of the other issues if you're a parent may have seen is oversaturation at times, because we don't know how many surveys are going to a certain population at a given time, or if that information is maybe one person could get the information they're seeking from another source. So the central registry and an initial little training to try and get out some good practice information to people who are doing surveying. That's policy 4490. Any feedback, questions on that?
I have a few questions.
Yeah.
Right here in number 1, number 1, employees and approved entities who survey any district stakeholders on a large scale will complete an online survey registration. What is large scale? I would love to know what that is.
So I will talk about small scale. We might have, if we want to buy some t-shirts, we might have a vendor say, I'll just send out a SurveyMonkey to teachers to ask which sizes. That's controlled population, and it's really sort of an easy way to get minor information. So large scale would be something, it's hard for me to define other than it's greater than a few people, it's greater than maybe a department, it's a school level or above, and that it's not collecting trivial kind of information, something that you would gather by passing around a clipboard to say, again, tell me your t-shirt size you want, or tell me which day you're available to come to this training. So it's the more serious, full school plus surveying.
Would it be fair to say that large scale were the surveys that we conducted at the beginning of COVID to try to get a feel for where people in the community were on certain issues?
Certainly. So that's a large scale. After our professional development, by policy, we do surveys. Anytime we're looking at an entity that, say, BYU requests as part of a research request to survey a community, they're an outside entity, they can apply for permissions. But again, we'd want to have record of that just so we can, if a parent says, I got the craziest policy or survey from this entity, we can go back and say, oh, all right, we have more information on that and work to improve it. Again, this is sort of a, without trying to hyper manage everyone's desire to get information, which is a great and worthy cause, but just having a record and a little bit of a control so that, again, Dr. Twitchell can manage that and say the Provo High population is scheduled to get 4 surveys within a 2-week period, and maybe negotiate between people. Can we space this out a little bit more, or is there, just a better way to do that?
And then I have another question in regards to what we talked about at our retreat with the PE Day. How if we as a board were interested in, getting, opinions from teachers and whatnot, that we would maybe go through them. So how does this apply to PEA? Are they their own entity and they wouldn't go through this process, or would they still have to? And are we just kind of adding more on their plate if we ask them to?
I don't think so. I think we would say they're an approved entity. I mean, they are the negotiating body for the district for employees. So I think that if they were doing that for, again, a more substantial audience, maybe not trying to think of a very small group, maybe the grounds crew. Maybe the grounds crew wouldn't require a whole process for this. But if you're doing a significant population of an employee group, a parent group, student group, or employee group.
So like if I wanted to survey all of the teachers just at maybe one of my schools, maybe just Westridge, I would probably need to have that approved?
It's a good idea to register it, I think. And again, we're thinking of a 10 to 15 minute training video just on the mechanics of surveying. You know that there are whole graduate level courses on surveying and just getting some of those principles out. I don't think any of us intend to police this or, again, hyper-manage. It's really to just ensure everyone's aware. And again, maybe Dr. Twitchell could contact you and say, hey, they're getting a similar survey from this entity, from the PTA. Do you want to combine them? Do you want to spread them apart a little bit more? So I would say PEA, they are an approved entity. Any organization that gets that has an approval for a request to do research, they'd be an approved entity, and we would ask them to participate in the same way. The registry we see just being a Google form where, again, you answer some questions about here's the audience, here's the time frame, here's the purpose, those kinds of information pieces.
So I have a question about
Sure.
this one. I know we're not doing it, but just to be safe with data collection and all that, is there anything in here that says we will not be selling any of this information?
We don't have specific language in there. We could certainly put it. We don't ever sell anything. I mean, so.
I just know that this has come up.
Yes.
Okay.
People are worried that data related to their child could be traced to their child, and that's a big parent concern.
So
Yeah.
this currently says protect student and employee data privacy, but maybe we could get a little more specific.
Or maybe have an opt-out. How difficult are opt-outs?
Well, this is only about the administration of surveys, not the participation. I don't know of any surveys we have where we require anyone's participation. All the surveys I know, and Dr. Twitchell's nodding, are there is a statement in there saying we encourage people to participate in these to get good information.
That's in the procedure, I think, right?
I don't think there's a procedure on this one.
I read that.
We could certainly insert
Procedure.
no data will ever be sold to any outside
Yeah,
entity.
it says do not require or have a perceived requirement.
There is, we do cite some student, some law and legal statute in there, I think, that refers to, again, this is only for internal use, but I'd be happy to put in a statement if you want.
So
explicitly
if you were to
saying it.
list a number 5 in the procedure,
Uh-huh.
then it simply states that we will not be selling or sharing this data
Yes.
outside of the survey's original scope. That would be an easy add.
Absolutely, and absolutely make that change if you like that. Please.
Turnaround time, like, is this gonna go up the works, so if you need something done within 2 weeks, like, how long will this take?
So there is no approval in it, it's simply registering. So someone could register it. It gives us on the back end the ability to look in and say, for these schools, I want to sort these schools and see what is the administration window and what conflicts are we going to see in that. But that's the responsibility on the back end. So hopefully it wouldn't impact that.
I had a question.
Sure.
So, at the very bottom, lines 34 and line numbers 3 and 4, which is line 55 to 58, it only mentions Dr. Twitchell and his title, Director of Assessment Data and Research, and Director of Communications in number 4, and we're coordinating with those two. Are there anyone else in any other positions we should coordinate with to do these surveys?
From our perspective at this point, no. Currently, Caleb, our Director of Communications, is in charge of large-scale, especially to the community surveying. So he's going to have a large part in this. Dr. Twitchell, again, over data, seems like the logical manager for that part. If you have suggestions, we're happy to. Again, this is your policy if you choose to accept it, and we're happy to change it to whatever you think.
Oh, this is under P1, so
Okay.
it's under procedure.
Okay.
I don't know. That was my question, was just, is there anyone that would have good input in coordinating these surveys?
That's a good question. Any of you have suggestions on that?
More people involved, the slower it takes.
Right.
Coming back to Gina's stuff.
Feels like
And
that's fine.
can you override it if you hate what Dr. Twitchell's advice is? You can go to Keith.
Again, there's no, you're never being authorized. It's not a no, you can't do
You're
this.
just
Yes,
being
you can.
told, hey, we're doing a
being
lot of
told.
these.
And if we saw something concerning, of course, Dr. Twitchell would reach out in every effort to help them improve the information that they're getting. But it's not approval.
So I think we could consider others on a case-by-case basis. If there
Sure.
was a survey that can be dealt with allocation of funds, then there
Sure.
might be some involvement there.
Yeah, and I can make a statement to that, saying this data is, again, the one about not being sold. It remains for internal use only, and those two folks are behind it and others as needed, in a case-by-case basis. For instance, if there were an elementary survey going out and Alex had a concern about it, then Dr. Twitchell would reach out to Alex. Would that meet the concern you have?
Yeah.
Okay. Anything else? Just so you know, that number is going to change as we talked it through in council on Monday. We decided this really isn't an instructional issue, it's a broader, so it'll be in the 7,000 series. So I will make 3 changes to that after we figure it out. The second policy is,
Can I
please.
say something about that? I was
Yeah.
debating if I should say it then or later, but after that comment. I think that we should, like, I'm glad we're talked about it, and I think it's good that maybe the board, when we get a brand new policy, it comes before us, we talk about it, but then we don't approve it that same day, so that if not only changes can be made the way we've talked about, but also we could get some more public input now that we've talked about it publicly and seen it, and just make sure it's where we want it before we vote on it. So I would just recommend that we hold off on voting on that one tonight.
I don't feel a rush, so that, for me, that works fine, and I would follow President Nelson's lead on that.
We can, I mean, we can postpone that, and we could even do, yeah, we can move it to,
Well,
we have to have this ready.
Are we all set?
We're on no deadline.
Sorry, I said President Nelson.
I was like, is she the
President Hall,
prophet?
yeah.
Wow.
There are a lot of President Nelsons. Sorry.
Promoted.
My apologies.
I caught it, but I was like, I was like, what you're saying.
I heard it
I
too,
was
I'm like.
I'm going to call you Super President Hall for the rest of the night, so that it tries to make up for that.
Well, wait, is this something, what you're asking for? I'm not saying I'm ready to vote, like, we have to vote on this tonight, but is that something we need to put into, like, board policy that we
New policies,
that
have a
if we want to
discussion.
make that a regular practice, is that something we need to do?
I think that's something to decide as a board, and then if we go in our handbook of procedures, so I don't know if it would be policy.
I spoke to some other boards around the state, and they have an unwritten rule that they do that, but it's not in their.
They have like a first reading and then a second reading.
And sometimes if they need to, a third, or however long,
So,
depending on the.
if I may add, I think that it's not a bad idea to have as a possibility, but there may be certain policies that do come with a particular
Yeah.
tight timeline.
Mm-hmm.
So hanging it up like that, especially when we know that these are board policies, if you feel good about it and you represent your community and we have to move on it.
That's probably why it's not written down in other boards,
Bingo.
because sometimes,
Yeah.
like the library thing was a deadline, but
Yeah.
this, there's no deadline.
So I have no problems then postponing this until our November meeting, and then having public input on it later. I would give 2 dates for public input, if people want to come tonight or on the 8th.
Well, I'm just saying it gives us time to
Yeah.
talk
So-
to people.
Okay.
Okay, I'll make those 3 changes and we'll have it up for next month, it sounds like. The next policy is not a new policy, it's a revision of policy 4020. I will apologize again on the outset for, oh my goodness, I have had some real problems with Word. One thing I've learned is if you have different versions of it, they don't go back and forth very well. So this one came via Google to Bonnie. I'm going to be using Google Docs from now on. In any case, what you have before you is policy 4020. It's changed. It has a few very minor changes. The major change is to include the legislative criteria for the selection of K-3 literacy materials. It is now required that Tier 1, meaning the instruction all students get for ELA in K-3, is research informed, and for Tier 2, that means interventions for about 20% of students who need more. It's a higher level of research requirement called evidence-based. And so that's the addition in the policy and procedure for 4020.
This is related / non-related, but kind of related. I don't know where those changes are. How do I know where, like on these, are we able to put them in like red or something so I can
Yes.
better know what's
Typically, we
done?
would show it to you in that markup status. That was one of the problems between changing this between people. I had read, practically the entire document at the end was red. And I didn't have time. But again, if you'd like to vote on this next month, I'm happy to go through and outline those for you.
That was line 53.
Yeah, it is one paragraph on each that is an addition. That is the major change. I apologize for not having those markups for you.
I wondered if that was the case. This is just a pretty simple change that's required anyways, right? It's required and we have to make the change.
It's supposed to be in our policy that those criteria are there.
And are you just co-opting state language on this?
Yes.
The other question is, we've already been doing that, right? We've already pretty much been doing that this whole time?
That is we have always had that in our rubrics for elementary literacy. As of about 20 years, there was a research base that was pretty solid.
Mm-hmm.
And so I would say again, that's been our practice overall. We want to do that. Not every field has as much research as early literacy, so it's a difficult standard, especially the evidence-based is a difficult standard to apply to any of our other content areas. But yes, we do have In fact, we ask for an independent, as part of our bid process, whenever we're getting a new curricula, we ask for independent research so that we have at least some evidence to work with from the beginning stage.
Okay, does the board want to push this one off too until the end of the month, or we could to vote on this one tonight?
If there's no deadline, then let's push it.
I was gonna say it was a minor change and I would be okay to
Well, I
approve
have
that.
some other questions on it,
Okay.
unless someone else does.
You want to ask those questions?
Yeah.
now?
So
Sure.
on line 10, it says on policy.
Are we on the new version or the old version?
I don't know.
The one that says draft on it?
The new one
It
does
does
not.
say draft?
The new one does not have line numbering because I couldn't figure out how to get line
I
numbering
did
on
it.
Google Docs.
I added line numbers
Oh, you
to
did
the
do
ones
it.
I put
Okay.
in Word docs, if
May
you're
I?
pulling
It
May I look
is.
at someone's computer?
Okay,
Thank
so
you.
here
Word
in
docs is the new one.
preschool through grade 12, and I was wondering if we were Canadian or should we change it to 12th grade?
It's your preference.
Some of us are
Sometimes.
Canadian.
Well, my mom's Canadian too, so that's why I
I
saw
will say,
that.
in the state circles, oftentimes we do hear it more. We hear
More
grade
grade
beforehand.
12.
It's more formal.
Okay.
But it's. I will change it to whatever the group wants me to change it to.
I'm fine with grade
Good.
12.
And then on the procedure one, the next one, it does not have line numbers, and that will make it difficult to tell you where we're at. Under district curriculum committees, the 5th line, it says, we'll evaluate and act upon citizen requests. And then kind of throughout the whole thing it says citizen, and I was wondering if we should change that to parent guardian, because citizen means anyone can request this, but in the policy it kind of really says parent guardian.
Yeah, it's an interesting question that I've vacillated on. Again, this policy, Keith wrote this policy originally about 10, 12 years ago. A parent can say, I don't want my child to read this book or use this curricula, and we try to always help them get an alternative book or something. It's a question that you could answer to whether you want it to be. This request, which is through F3, I think, Form 3, which hasn't changed, so it's the original one on the policy book 20. It does have, in the interest of this being public education, anyone could protest it. If we go back to the library policy, which we all remember from last time, it has a form for parents to say, I don't want this for my kids. Then it has another form for I don't want this available to anyone. And we have limited that one by policy. We wrote it for current employee, current parent or guardian, and current student. So I can see rationale for both.
That's what I brought up, wanted
Yeah.
to bring up. In the library policy, we specifically were parent guardian. Do we want to, change wording on all policies to say that it's parent guardian, or do we want to make it all citizens? Or
What about a grandparent that's not the guardian but cares about their kid's education?
Plus, we live in a community where we have a number of university professors who do want to weigh in on certain things, and sometimes in our process, we may involve them in the selection of materials. So
This
it
is
might seem to be
specifically
exclusive if we change the
Yeah.
language.
So again, this is for a piece of an adopted curricula to say, no, we won't allow this anymore. I can make a rationale. I can make an argument for both sides that we are public schools, and so there is that public voice. I can also make the argument that we did determine to limit that to those with a vested interest in the system in the library policy.
My next was in phase 2. It says we're going to use the PTA to recruit parents, and why don't we have a rotation like the sex ed committee does?
I'm going to give you the honest, straight up answer because we've had difficulty getting parents. So we are going straight to city PTA and saying, will you help us? It could be them, it could be people they know. We could certainly go by a rotating basis.
Because this is kind
It's
of
up to
a
you.
rotating committee that you know, they're always
Yeah.
looking at different things.
Yeah.
And there's different committees for different subjects.
Yeah, we're in the procedure right now, and the superintendent can weigh in on how much, you know, procedure is different from policy. Again, I would be happy in either case.
When you work with the PTA, you're not just saying, oh, you're on that board, you're going to be on this committee. You're just asking them who
To
do you
help
know
find people.
in our district that might be willing, right?
Or asking at the CDPTA, you know the PTA
Right.
president, maybe
Go
they
talk
can
to
go
them.
talk to them and
Yeah.
then go.
Could your education commissioner. So it's for two reasons. One, and we're seeing this materialize with the library committees, there could be a perceived, this person likes me, or, you know, I'm going to choose my sister-in-law to come be on the committee. So
Or
I'm
only
going.
people who are involved in PTA are
Sure.
chosen.
Yeah.
And that's my concern, especially in my area.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them don't have time to be involved in PTA.
Yeah. Yep, I agree with you, and this is one of those details that was just existing in the policy that we didn't consider anything. I was more focused on getting that new legislation in, but I would support
And
the
this
decision in
language
any
is
way.
about 10 years old, so we can review this
Sure.
language in council meeting and come up with a cleaner version.
Maybe we should postpone this one till the 8th.
Well,
Sure.
again, we
Yeah.
can do that, but we're talking about the procedure right now.
Yeah, that's true, the
And-
procedure.
Yeah.
And I had another
Sure.
question. So it says that 5 parent, guardian, university department chair, and citizen, and I wasn't sure, I needed a clarification.
Mhm.
Does this mean there's 5 parent guardians, 5 department chairs, and 5 citizens? Or they're just 5 total and not
5
15?
total.
Okay, because that wasn't very clear.
I can work to make that clear.
And then on phase 3, will instructional aides receive this professional development for the new curriculum as well?
Typically not. Typically, these Tier 1 materials are intended for a teacher, a certified teacher to utilize. However, it's quite common for either a school or for their system or a teacher himself or herself to train the pair that they're working with on certain components. It would be a big ask to take someone with no licensure and say, boom, here's this program because it's such, it's so tied to having an educator's background. So that's the short answer. The long answer, you always know from me, is if you want me to change it, I'll change it.
No, that was just those are all my
Okay.
questions.
Okay. So do we want to bring this to the board tonight? Do we want to vote on this evening with that minor change on the policy?
And the change in the policy, just help me remember.
That's the K through 12. So we're not going to do the 4490.
Right.
Bring that one. This is for the.
I just meant, which change did you want?
I don't think there was. Did we
Okay.
have any changes in the actual policy? I think it was all changes just in the procedure.
So we don't need to vote on it then?
And the policy we do because wasn't there a small change in there?
That's what I'm not
Hang on.
remembering.
A change from the original, and that's why you brought it to
Right.
us today.
Correct.
Not a change that we requested right now. That's what you're
Right,
saying?
yeah.
Oh, okay.
Gotcha.
That's what I was
So do
Okay.
we want to vote on this tonight?
What's the change? I can't see it.
It
so
is
it's-
on line 53. We've added that it's evidence-informed for core instruction and evidence-based for intervention. That was not in the language before this draft.
And that's the only change? I'm fine
It's
with
the
it.
only major change. There's a few little wording errors and process changes.
Okay, so yes, we're voting on this tonight?
I'm okay with it.
I'm okay with that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. In lieu of time, would anyone object if we move to review of council ideas to the early morning study session on October?
Good
October?
with that?
We'll have October 25th.
October 25th.
Oh, yeah.
Are you guys okay if we move that there?
Well,
I know
it just
it's
keeps getting bumped, and this is the 5th meeting this school year, and I was hoping we were talking about these every single board meeting. but it just keeps getting bumped every single time.
We do have extra time in on the 25th, and it can be the first item on the agenda.
We overprogrammed the meeting.
So this would give us extra time to talk about it.
And we were also supposed to be going over board goals, and this is again the 5th meeting of the school year, and that hasn't happened.
Well, but we talked about board goals, that we're going to wait until the new board is in place.
It's going to take a while.
So, any other objections then? Yes or no? Do you want to go on with this, or do you want to?
Do you want Pinky promise that we're gonna do it on
Pinky,
the 25th?
do it
I will
first.
put
Pinky swear?
it as the
Yeah.
first agenda item. Okay. All right, school grades. I'm going to turn the time over to Ron Twitchell, or did you want to talk about it first?
Ron, let's not take 45 minutes. And that's not a commentary on the topic, it's just time.
On the presenter is what you're talking about,
No,
I know. As of today at 12:45, the state released to the public the school report cards for the first time in 4 years. The report cards were last released in 2019, and at that time, because of a moratorium, they did not put the letter grades on, but they had all the calculations, so if you knew the cut scores, you could actually see what the grades were, and everybody knew that. And so we do have the ability to take a look at what we had before and what we came up with this time. I had the opportunity of having access to these report cards for a little over a week, and I shared this with leadership so that we could take a look at it. I shared it with the principals of each building.
That's not the right one.
I can display it.
I can put it on mine if you want me
Sorry,
to.
I thought that was it. So you're saying the grades are back?
The grades are back with the letter grade
letter
this
grade
time.
back.
Yep. So the grades before 2019, they did have a letter grade, but it was a different assessment, and so the state doesn't actually have those. I can't find them anywhere. What we can do is go back to 2019. That's why I bring it up. That's the last time I can actually look at data that's reflective of the same assessments that we have been taking, and this time they did put the letter grades on them. When we met together with a consortium of assessment directors, as they were looking at those, most of my colleagues had decided, it was on a Thursday, they decided they weren't going to release those until the next day about 4:30 because of what they looked like. I had already sent mine out because I was pretty excited about what we had seen with what the teachers had done. So, do you want me to get my computer out and...
It's okay.
Just got it open.
Like the same TV link.
Stretch it out. I can tell you that they're going to, on the assessments, on the assessments, there's going to be measures that they're going to use. We have the Utah Aspire Plus for the grades 9 and 10, the RISE test for grades 3 through 8. Those will be used for both the achievement score and the let's go down to this next one so we can, there we go. So we have the RISE and the Utah Aspire Plus, that's for achievement and for growth. They're both worth 56 points. That's going to be on ELA, math, and science. And so they do a calculation where they take the 56 divided by 3, and you get 18.6666 repeating. And so you have the WIDA, which is for the EL progress, which is 13 points each. We have the RISE and Utah Split. You have a really high achieving school. You still have, if you took all your students and ranked them in order from least to greatest, you still have a bottom 25% of those students. And you are supposed to show growth with those students, not just achievement. And so that one's worth 25 points also. And then for the high schools, you have the college and career readiness. And there's 3 measures that they have on that one. You have the ACT for students who are scoring 18 or better on the ACT, the percent of students
take that percent times 25 to find out how many points you get. You have the courses taken, so you have the CTE courses, you have the concurrent enrollment courses, and you have the AP courses. You take the percentage of the participation on that who passed those tests or passed the classes, and you take that times the 25 points to get that one. On the 4-year graduation rate, we need to remember the graduation rate is always a year off. For 2022, that report isn't due until this December. So when they go 4-year graduation rate, that is going to be from 2021 back 4 years and take the average of those 4 years. Now, I want to remind us all of what we just went through with the last 2 years of education. It's unprecedented what we've done, and I'm excited about what we're going to see from what our teachers have done during that. As we go to the report card categories, for elementary school, you're going to have the achievement and growth, you're going to have the EL progress, and the lowest 25% for a total of 150. If your school does not have at least 10% population of EL students, then that category is taken off and your total score is going to be out of 137. Since they don't have that population, they can't earn any points, they don't want to ding them, and so it changes that outcome. When we go to the report card for secondary, for the high school, we've added the 75 points for post-secondary readiness, and so the total is 225. Again, if a high school does not have a 10% population of EL students, the English language learners, then they would go back to 212 for a total possible instead of the 225. One of the questions I get is, what about the participation? What is, we have to have a 95% participation. And in order to identify participation, the students have to answer at least 6 questions on the test in order to say that they participated. Then the 95% accountability is part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. I think I got that right. And so that's a requirement. If we don't have 95% participation, then they will take the number of students that were supposed to have taken it, add that in as zeros, which would lower your score. And so as we take a look come down here to the next one, just to give you a real quick example, let's say I hit 93% in elementary school of 368 students. Eventually they're going to have a 2.3% decrease in their score at just 93% participation instead of 95. For the high school, because you have a higher number of students, you put there the number of students who were required to get to 95%, and they would end up getting the 2.4% decrease if they didn't have the 95% participation. So we work really hard to get the 95% participation with our schools, and we reached that. Let's come down to the next slide, please. Thank you. So we're going to take a look at the scores. You're going to take the 18.67 times your ELA population that was proficient. That means they scored a 3 or a 4 on the RISE test, or if they came in as proficient or highly proficient on the Utah Aspire Plus. Same thing for math, science, you add those up to get your achievement points. On the growth points, if we come down here, it's going to be the same thing because it's 56%, divided by 3, so you're going to have the same number we're going to be multiplying by for both ELA, math, and science. You come up with those points for your growth. Now the difference is calculating the SGP, and people ask me, well, what is an SGP? It's very simple, so I'm going to quickly go through it. It's a 4-step process. 1, the first year you have all your students take a test, and they're going to take it on math, science, and ELA. They're going to, once they got their score, you go to step 2, and they're going to group all students with the same score. So all these students have 320, here's all the 390, so you're all grouped together with somebody who got the same score as you. Then we go to the next year, and then what we're going to do is we're going to take the test again for the next grade level, and you're going to take a look at the scores you got, and you're only compared with those who are in the same category with you. So your pool of students, everybody who scored the same as you, you're going to be compared with them. Everybody is going to be taken with their scores for the second year, put in order from least to greatest, and then you're going to be given a ranking by that. So if I score in the 75th percentile, I've scored better than 75% of the people in my pool. And that's your growth. And that's what we're going to take for our score. So that's what they're doing here on that one. Let's come down to the EL points. This is one where we're going to take a look at the EL population and how they do on the WIDA Access 2.0. They take that every year, and we're looking for the growth and the expected growth for those students and those scores. The impact for the schools, because everybody says, well, how do we do with our neighbors? How do we do? First of all, Provo School District didn't have a single school that didn't meet that criteria. Every single one of our schools has a population of 10% or more EL students. So we're going to be on the 150 for the elementary and middle school, and we will be at the 225 for the high schools.
Yell it out.
So I have a question for this, Ron. And I'm really hoping the state's doing something for this, and maybe you know. So just off of like a quick math, right? Let's say we have our schools that include the EL versus other districts that don't have the EL, okay? If, let's say, the categories that you had up at the top, that were the common categories except for EL, let's say that school district had 3 points deducted in that first category. I can't remember what it was at the top. It was like the third
Achievement.
Achievement, bingo. And then let's say we also have 3 points deducted in that achievement category. As of right now, that scoring would be equivalent, right? 3 and 3. But if we add in our 13 points, and now we also miss any points in that, our percentage is lower.
Yeah, and I'm going to show that.
Okay.
I'm going to show, yep, and I'm going to show you the comparisons. I've taken into account on that, so we can actually compare apples to apples.
Does the state do anything for that?
No.
Oh, so they could be hammering districts?
They're aware of it, but yeah,
okay.
Yes.
And then one quick clarification: when you put the kids in the pools based on whoever has the same score as you, are you comparing and you get 75% better than your pool? Is that pool your school, your district,
The
or
whole state.
The whole state.
The whole state.
Cool.
So what the state does is they take everybody and in that pool, no matter where you were, you're going to be put in order so they're looking at growth compared to everybody else.
In the statewide. That's all I want.
Statewide. Yep.
Pool statewide. Okay. Cool.
Okay. Let's go back to this one because I want to show you because this. Alpine in the elementary schools, about a third of their schools don't have the 10% population. You take a look at Nebo, 13 out of 30, again, 30%, a third of their schools don't have the 10% population for the elementary schools. The Nebo did not have any of the middle junior high schools, so they're at 150. But it did impact them for all three, for Alpine and for elementary and high schools for Nebo, where they had students or schools that didn't have that percent. Let's go ahead and go on down because you said keep it 45 or less than 45. We got the 25 points for the lowest quartile growth. Again, let's go keep going down. Right here's the cut score. So they're going to have two different ways to do the cut score. You have a percent and you have the points earned. If you are a school that did not have the 10%, then you're going to strictly go off the points, or off the percentage, excuse me. So, because you're going to take a percent of the 137 and a third of the 212, because your points would drop you down if you didn't have that. Does that make sense? Whereas we work with both of them from Provo School District because we fit both categories. Let's go ahead and go down because I've already explained this one as we were trying to draw it out. Again, it's going to be for the points are the 225 that we're looking at for the schools. All right, let's come down here. And here's the next question people ask. Well, do we count every grade or every test? Only tests are only included if they're considered valid, and that is if they have 85% of the test completed. Remember, for participation, they only had to answer 6 questions. So the test counted for participation, so we don't get dinged for the participation rate on there. But they're only going to count the test that had 85% of the test completed. So the one test that only had 6 questions counts for the gateway to say we're not going to get dinged for the 95% participation, but they didn't have enough of the 85% or the 85% of the score, so it's not going to be counted as a complete test. It's not valid. It won't be counted in the calculation. We have to make sure that we're only counting students that are here 160 days at least. If they're here less than that, then they're saying that that you weren't going to be held accountable for them because they were in another system somewhere. And so we're only going to count those who are here 160 days at least. We are going to count the students who are the alternative assessed students. That's your 1% population. We're going to make sure that they're offered the DLM, which is the alternative assessment for math, English, and science. And then we're going to enroll the students that are enrolled in the course. So we have classes where we have an accelerated class where students are taking a math 6, 7. So they're taking 2 math classes in a year. They're a 6th grader taking that class. They will be counted in the 6th grade test, but not in the 7th grade test because they have to be enrolled. It's the test they're enrolled in for that grade that they're in. Does that make sense? And so that's the requirement of what tests are being counted in the calculations. All right, well, let's come down to the next one. This is what does the report card look like? Let's go. This is where it is. You'll notice they put the grade down lower this year. But as we come in, the first one that they're going to do is they're going to give us the categories. So we have achievement, growth, the English language learner progress, and they have early literacy on this one. I don't know why, but the growth up here is going to have the growth of the lowest 25% is found in here also. So it's kind of hidden. But they have all 4 categories, 1, 2, 3, and then this one actually has 2 categories in it also. They have the descriptor up here where they show you this is the critical needs, this is typical, and this is exemplary. If we come down to the next slide, they're going to describe what those are. They're actually tied to the letter grades. So if you take a look at the grade, if you get an A, you're known as an exemplary school. If you get a C, then you're a typical school. And if you get an F, then it's a critical needs school. And so you can see your grade for each of those scores that you were getting for achievement, growth, EL population, and now my mind goes blank on the last one. Bottom 25%. Let's go to the next slide. Thank you. The next slide is going to be this is going to be a qualitative evaluation of the school. This is where they're going to talk about other measures that are unscored and like consistent attendance. They have the school accountability as the self-reported indicators. Each school is allowed to report 2 indicators where they get to toot their horn and say, look at what we're doing. We've got this program that we're using and we're getting this kind of participation in it and we're succeeding in this. And so your DLI schools may choose the fact that we're a DLI school teaching Chinese or French and talk about the population and what they're doing there. These do not count as part of the grade, but it allows them to put it in the same location when people are looking at the scores. The next slide brings us down to the third part where we're going to have the score, and it's going to give you a percent of the total. Again, remember, because some schools didn't have the 90% or the 10% of the EL students, they don't give the point score in here because it would be confusing because you say, well, why'd they get this grade with this score? That should, well, because they had the different denominator than what we had. But they have the score here for the B, and then it says it's commendable. Come back down here. So we say, what does it mean? A means that they're doing everything. You're going to exceed expectations for academic achievement and growth and its equitable educational opportunities. So the words are and they're doing this. It meets and is satisfactory, meets expectations for this or this, and is adequate. This one is partially meets expectations or, so you have the growth or the achievement, and it's not adequate, and that means you didn't do it for any of those. For the high school, they're going to bring in also and post-secondary, so it's and it's satisfactory. It's going to be or, so they have to hit one of those 3 in order to be up here. They scored it high enough that it brought them into there. This one is or for those also, and then it's equitable, and then it's going to be and saying we didn't get it. So it's a failed everywhere on those. That's what the meanings of those grades mean. Let's go to the next slide. The next one is where they're going to actually show your points earned in each of those categories. So you can add those up and do the division and find out what the percent was, and it should come up with that percent right there if you know what your denominator really is. If you're going to divide those points by 212 or 225 for high schools. Does that make sense? I'm going really fast here.
My question is, has the website been updated with all the new information?
With this one?
Yeah.
It came out 12:45 today.
Oh, okay.
Yep. The next slide, here's our scores. This is elementary.
So Ron, maybe you can describe why you said at the beginning why you were happy with this.
It's going to take another slide or two, because as I look at the grades, I know, because I've worked with the schools long enough that as I saw some of it, it's like, let's get out the party equipment, because this is awesome. But I'm going to show you why in just a minute. Our average is a B. Our average percent possible is a 56.6 for our elementary schools. Let's go down to the middle schools and the high schools. Let's go to the middle school. So they're going to both, our average is a 56.6. Both Dixon and Centennial got a C. That looks concerning at first, but let me put it in perspective in a little bit, and you'll understand what that means. High schools, our average is a C because we took all three. Our average is a 54.1% for the high schools. Let's come down here. We're going to compare to the districts. This is regardless of the EL. So they're all their elementary schools, middle schools, junior highs, high schools, regardless of whether or not they were dividing by 137 or 150. Their averages are 59.4 for Alpine. We were 56.6, and Nebo is 52.6. That's our elementary. 58.3, 46.8, and 53.3 for Nebo. For the middle schools, junior highs. And then for the high schools, we got Alpine high schools are 60.5, 54.1, 59.4. Now I say, okay, let's start comparing a little bit more closely, apples to apples. So we go to the next one, and this is going to be, this is where we take out those schools that didn't have the 90% or the 10% EL populations. And it brings them down to 57.3, so we're 56.6. So, and then Nebo comes down to 50, 57.1, 46.8, and 52.7. It's still a little bit of a concern, but we're going to take a look at a little bit here. High schools 58.8, high schools 60.8, and 53.6. Makes a big difference when you start looking at that. We'll go side by side so you can actually see what the difference was. So this was with all the schools in it, including those who didn't have the 10% EL population. These are what it looks like when we adjust that just a little bit. Now, let's come down to the comparative high schools. Alpine and Nebo have an alternative high school. They didn't get put into that category, so when you took a look at the high school scores that they had listed there, they didn't have it because they didn't come up with the letter grade, because they didn't have the data. They didn't look at the data and said, we just can't do a grade for it. I think they let them off the hook, because I could do the math, come up with a 30.2, which gives Alpine an F, and Nebo gets an F, whereas Independence gets the D. And but it's important to understand that the perspective of Independence High School is to get kids to graduate. And therefore, and instead of just having some place to put the kids, taking them out of the other schools, and just being set off aside, they're doing it. And remember, this is the graduation rate that was calculated with this only goes to 2021, because we haven't got 22, because it's not due until December. And they, Dr. McKee can tell us, they're just going up, aren't they, with their graduation rate at Independence?
It'll be close to 78% this year.
So when you take a look at this and realize that we're a year off and that it's even getting better, this is something to celebrate. This is something to say, you know what? They're doing it right. They're treating their kids right. They're approaching what the kids need appropriately. The next one is going to be a comparative report. This is from 2019. There was one problem with Amelia Earhart. The state, every time you try to load it up, it kicks you out of the thing. I can't get the data for Amelia Earhart, but everybody else is here. As you take a look, this is the difference between what happened between 2019 and what happened this year. This is where I want to make sure you understand. Timpanogos. And that's after coming out of 2 years of extreme difficult educational experience. You take a look at Canyon Crest, and you know we look at poor Rock Canyon. Rock Canyon got a B, 62.9%.
They just need.
They missed it by half a point of being next grade up. They were that close. But if you take a look at what's going on here and realize what we just went through and what our teachers have done with their students and what our students are accomplishing with that, it's just remarkable. It's one of those things you just like, wow.
And the test was not made easier to compensate for
Nope.
2 years of COVID.
It was not made easier. It's the same test that they had in 2019. That's the thing that whether you agree with that test or not, the fact is, this is what they did pre-COVID, this is what they did post-COVID, and kudos to the teachers and the students working together to get this done. It's just amazing. Let's take a look at the middle schools and the high school. So the middle school, they did drop a little bit. It's 0.5 average for the 2 schools, and that. But I'm going to show you something I hope that'll help you feel a little better. But I take a look at Independence. Every high school went up a letter grade. So Independence went from an F to a D, Provo went from a C to a B, Timpview went from B to an A. That's remarkable. And again, the tests were the same. Then where can I find the report cards? If you go to the Data Gateway, and you can Google it, Utah Data Gateway, and it'll bring it up. It's down here under Accountability Report Card, and it's been available as of 12:45 today. Do you have the spreadsheet that I sent also? I just wanted to show one more thing because I sat in a meeting on Friday. It was a BYU meeting for the RPP Research Partnership, and I sat next to Alpine, and as we were talking, they were kind of talking about how wonderful they were, and I had to. I started pulling out my computer to do the spreadsheet because I like to back things up with facts. And a couple people are smiling back there because they know that the person I'm sitting next to from Alpine happens to be my brother. And so you understand how sibling rivalries go, right? And so that's what spurred me to do a spreadsheet to take a look at the data on here. And can you find it? Or okay.
Whether you can see it or not.
Compare demographics. Okay, this is what we did is we came over here. If you can just slide it over a little bit, and whether we lose the names or anything. Can we slide? Oh, you're okay. No, you're okay. There we go. So we came in and we're actually going to look at the economically disadvantaged, the English language learners, the students with disabilities. So I'm looking for impact on the students. Okay? And if we go back now to the, so we can show the names. I just want to make sure you understood what I was taking this from. I looked at the demographics that were reported on the scores. That means that the higher the school, the less impacted they were, because I sorted them by those 3 categories. So the lower you go, the more highly impacted you are by these scores. Does that make sense? All right. I've made our school colors this color, everybody else is white. So when you start comparing now with those schools, because he was touting on how great they had done with the middle school at Orem Junior High because it was their Title I junior high. And so I went and took a look at it. If we go down, oops. But as you take a look where Provo is with our heavily impacted population, and then you compare and you say, you know, you can see they did it with the population they had. They didn't make excuses. They did it with their students. Heavily impacted. If we go down to the middle school, there we go. Again, we come down here, here's their Orem Junior High, and they got a C, and yeah, but we're a Title I junior high. If we take a look at the score that they had, the 51%, 49%, but 48%. So you can see these two, like I said, they went down a little bit, but they were highly impacted schools, and they still did okay. I would not want to point fingers and say, what did you do? Why did you drop a 0.5%? You know, it's because, first of all, there's a lot of change between those 2 years in the population. Think about the fact that in 2019, where are those kids now? Are they still in that school? And the fact that we went through, so it's going to impact a school that only has 2 years to bring the students together and work together, compared to what the elementary schools are going to have, where you have 6 years or 7 years with them, and then the high schools where you, for us, we have 4 years. So highly impacted, still did well. Let's go to the high schools and compare the high schools. And you think, Tim, you take a look at the people around them that are, and compare. Take a look at Provo High and compare them with those who are similar schools. And then you take a look at Independence, and they're more highly impacted than the 2 alternative schools from our neighboring districts. So overall, my message is they did a fantastic job. What they did during the COVID experience, they didn't say, oh, this is terrible, we can't do this. They taught the kids, and they helped them grow, they helped them achieve, they helped them overcome, and it shows up in the data that we see here. It's interesting to see, Caleb shared with me the comment from the state school superintendent, and it was kind of cautious about what now we're going to see what really happens. And what I'm saying is, Provo City School District, you did well. Overall, you did well. Was it perfect? No. Are we still where we want to be? No. But boy, did they do a great job. And they should be commended for what they did because of what you see here. Any questions?
I just want to say, Tim, you beat Lone Peak.
Yeah. And Lone Peak is way up there in the unimpacted. So, but no, it is what it is. But in reality, they did a good job. And a lot of people are out there today, since it became public a little before 1. A lot of school districts are out there going, and Provo should be going, yeah. Any other questions?
Thank you.
Are you going to put this on board docs then?
I'm sorry, but that was my bad. I got it, and I didn't.
It's not her. I got it late because I was working on it, and so I gave it to her.
She'll get it to us.
So, yeah. You have it in your email though, right, Mary?
Yeah.
Okay. I just want to make sure you have it.
Not
And I
the-
also
not
want to
the
volunteer,
Not the
Ron, if you have
Excel.
questions for Ron, he's happy to talk about this as you tell. So,
Well, I feel like we just had a graduate level math class in a way.
For crying out loud, that's one
So
of the-
thank you so much.
okay.
So,
Thanks, Ron.
all right, I'm going to turn the time over to Doug Finch
Thank
for
you.
open enrollment.
Yeah, I'll try and work quickly through both of my agenda items, knowing that our time is short today, but thank you. It's hard to follow Ron. What a great presenter, and what a great fun presentation that was. In your board docs, you've got 2 documents that related to open enrollment. Every fall, we come against this annual obligation to talk about the capacity of our buildings because we open the open enrollment window. In the past, we opened that on December 1st this year. Because of a change in the state legislature to open that window a little longer, it's actually November 15th. So we felt like coming to the October board meeting, just so we could have this discussion, have plenty of time to make some decisions before the November 15th open enrollment window came open. We made it part of October's board meeting this year. Let me just say something about the data you're looking at. You've got one table in there, one of the PDF documents that talks about our current status. That means we're always open for open enrollment. There's what's called an early enrollment period and there's a late enrollment period. Late means that you're after the third February of the year leading into the next academic year. So there's a window that's called early from November to February, and there's certain preference and ways that we figure out whether a school has room or not, and then we move into late enrollment. Right now we're in late enrollment for the 22-23 school year. So you can see what our current status is. If you look at that one with me, that will show you that what we base our capacity on is the teacher allocations that are received in the general fund from our folks in the HR department. It doesn't represent all of the staff of that building. It represents what's offered to them as they sit down with Jason Cox and their supervisor and they identify a ratio assignment based on the projected enrollment. You know as well as I do that these schools also have TSSA money, they have trust lands money, they have lots of other ways, Title I money in some cases, that they can do some additional creative things about hiring additional staff. This is just for the purpose of figuring open enrollment. We go off of the base allocation that we offer from the district office. Okay. Then you can see the calculation in the tables say for open enrollment for someone to be admitted into a program that's not their home enrollment, neighboring district or neighboring school, we put a 90% threshold. In other words, we try and save some seats for kids who might move in and say, oh, you gave away all the seats in 4th grade because you took in all these open enrollment kids and I just moved to your neighborhood. How fair is that, right? So, for instance, this is an example my office uses all the time. Someone moves in, or not someone moves in, an open enrollment request comes in almost every day to our department. And we want to have our child move to this school for 3rd grade. We'll call that school or we'll look online at that school. And for an elementary school, 27.5 is that threshold as it relates to the allocation of teachers. We take 90% of that, which is essentially taking about 3 or so students off of that, and that number becomes 24. And the minute they become 24, they're closed for an out-of-area student to enroll in that school, and we reserve those last few spots for people who just move in and out of the neighborhood by just necessity of moving to that school's,
Or may come back to our district from being a charter school. Or
another great point, Keith, yeah, because we still have individuals who are either full-time or part-time coming back and still re-enrolling in our school from maybe some of the dip that we took with the COVID and other types of things that happened. Great point, Keith. So I just wanted to give you that idea of, you can see all the schools are operating at a really full, efficient location. I think the only school that you'll see on that one is there's one school that has still a positive number on there, right?
Wasatch.
Yeah. So Wasatch as a whole school still has 32 seats. Now they could be scattered throughout different grade levels, but there's 32 seats as a whole school below the 90% threshold for the staffing that's there. Otherwise, you can see that the schools are all working at that capacity that we fund schools for, and you see the different levels in the table column headings, right, or above that. Now, that doesn't mean that the schools are closed. I already explained to you a scenario of someone says, can I get into Provo High School as a sophomore right now? Well, Provo High School, for the freshman class and the sophomore class, have reached numbers to where their master's schedule is having a hard time offering sophomore level classes to kids right now. So that's a situation where if there's no room for someone to join that sophomore or junior class right now, or sophomore or freshman class, then we're saying that open enrollment is closed. Now, there happens to be room in classes in the junior and senior class. So in other words, we're being somewhat sophisticated in identifying if we can take more kids into our programs, we want to make sure that we're maximizing our enrollment. And that's just the intent of what we feel is the vision for the school district, to continue to be a place where people want to bring their kids or bring them back, as Keith mentioned.
And the marginal cost per kid is like 0. So.
Yeah, exactly. So you've up and got the ship going, you've got all the staffing, you've got all the building up and functioning. To take on each WPU, which is another $8,000, is a great financial motivation for us to accept kids at this point. Even partial enrollment, right? Great point, great point. Any questions about that report before I move on to the second?
The only question I have was about Timpview High School. Being under construction and that we're already over our 90% capacity.
So it doesn't say open on theirs.
It does. Well,
right. It's the only one that doesn't have something.
So I'll move to that spreadsheet. If you're looking at the 23-24 projections, then that's exactly where I want to go next. But I want to just make sure that the current one that you're looking at for the academic year we're in, I want you to make sure you understand this, because it takes a bit to get your head wrapped around what this open enrollment thing is. And I want you to also be aware that Derek earlier shared some data, for instance, that talked about capacity of our buildings. That's functional capacity that's used by him. Know that we come off of different numbers, and we'll get to that when we look at that. Right?
And I want to make a statement here.
Yeah.
The way we're doing it, I love, and here's why. Okay, that you went to we had a DLI school, but it was a sole DLI school. The entire school was DLI, and that was it. Okay, and the open enrollment that we had was based off of building capacity, not FTE capacity. And so what happened is the principal wanted to invite any and everybody into their school to come learn the DLI program. And what would happen is you would do your FTE allocation based off of the enrollment and projections and things like that. And then all of a sudden the start of the year would happen, and there would be 200 transfers in, and now they need 6 new teachers. And it was like, what the heck, where did they come from? And well, they went from other schools, and it's like, well, wait a second, now we've got to pull FTEs from over here, but they've already got kids. And so by doing it off of the functional allocation creates stability in the schools.
So there is a little subtlety there, and I appreciate Derek's comment there to give some context. It just takes a little while to get used to how this rolls. It's taken me a number of years working in student services to really properly administer this program. So thank you for letting me offer a little bit of I won't call it a graduate math class, we'll just call it a little junior high refresher here. Thank you. So any questions about our current status? Because that's just one page, and then the other one involves probably a discussion, perhaps, for some questions you
I
want
know
to
at
ask.
Franklin this year, and this isn't the first time this happened, they had to hire a third kindergarten teacher because all of a sudden there was more 5th graders than was expected. And that happened after school started.
Right. Not an ideal situation, is it? But they just have to kind of respond to who shows up. In the schools, the schools
And
that have
for kindergarten, it's a little harder than
right?
the other grades.
Yeah. And that fluctuality that comes and goes in some of our schools that have high mobility, it really is who comes to school in the fall, and you just have to be responsive to the kinds of things you just mentioned. Great point, Terry. Could I move then to the projections for next year? Okay, so this is a different, by statute, this now talks about what Derek was mentioning. This now comes to the available classroom spaces that are available for projecting for the 2023-24 school year, because that early enrollment window that people can apply in between November 15th and the 3rd Friday in February is a window that we make the decision of whether they're admitted or not based on the capacity of the building. The theory behind that is if we've made that decision by February, then the school district can make a change in allocations based on the numbers they see to be timely about hiring teachers and allocating FTEs versus last minute, like was mentioned there. So these numbers you see in front of you, you see the first column talking about teaching stations for regular education. Note this number is different than the one Derek shared with you before, right? This is taking out rooms where Kodai music is taught, rooms where special education is taught, rooms where you might have an art teacher who's set up for specialties all day long, or a place where there's a breakout group to work on small study and so forth for middle schools or high schools, so forth, right? This is the identified teaching spaces that the building has. We go through that same calculation, we go 90%, and then therefore you can see what that projected move up numbers are for us based on the October 1 count we just did. We just essentially take every kid by neighborhood and move them up to their next school. That's where the green column comes from. And therefore you can see the space that we have the physical capacity to do for next year. So again, as we reviewed this as council earlier this week, we identified that we're pretty well in the open, as you can see on the last column, for all of our schools. The one school that we want to call into question, Melanie, you're hinting to this, is a school that, again, typically every year when we've had this conversation, we've talked about that it's been tight at some of our high schools. In particular, Timpview High School sometimes has run into a capacity issue there, right? And we've negotiated, figured things out in the past for the very reasons you mentioned, Melanie, and others, as we discussed as council, the superintendent, and I think Todd is the representative from the secondary schools, has wanted you to really consider and have on your business agenda today the possibility of voting to make a 1-year designation for that school to remain open or closed. The closed would be something that identifies that the school will only serve those students who are in the boundary area, or those that have already been accepted previously by choice. And we'd probably put in that caveat thing of other extenuating, say, circumstances. We need to sometimes handle in student services like an emergency placement, family conditions, those sorts of things that might still make sense for us to make an exception or appeal to allowing someone to continue high school. So let me pause there and ask some questions. Go ahead, Nate.
And does this represent all the new classrooms that will be open this year?
I did pose that question too, and you can maybe help me out with that. I spoke with Momi this morning. She anticipated the net gain loss of moving into some new classrooms and having some other classrooms that then go under essentially demolition for the next phase. There might be an addition of 1 classroom addition, she told me this morning. I wasn't aware of that previous to this morning. She said 1 classroom might be, and then maybe a half-time special education classroom, I might be able to put a teacher in there teaching half-time. That's about the sum total of it.
It's negligible.
We're anticipating 2023, 2024, they're going to be in the new building, is that correct?
Yes, correct. That is correct.
So are we going to have the 4 classrooms out in the portable, or are those gone?
The portables out in front will be gone.
Yeah. So we'll be counting classrooms again, right? We'll be doing the kind of thing that Derek showed you earlier today, and we'll make sure that, and again, I appreciate your question, it's a great one, Nate, about what is the impact on any building who picks up a trailer, who has a construction project that's finished. We're going to be in a whole different situation, of course, a year or 2 from now when we go from Dixon out to the new middle school and talking about capacity for that facility, right? So,
and
go
the
ahead.
cardboard will be gone, right? I mean, the kids won't be walking through
Plywood?
cardboard, but the plywood.
The cardboard would have had holes in it.
That'll be gone, right? Because it's mainly just.
Those are going to be the new urinals.
Those will be the new urinals.
Whoa.
Out of plywood.
That wasn't part of my presentation.
I want to know the urinal capacity.
Yeah.
Did we talk to Momi? I know Fidel, like, he was so scared of limiting who could go to the school. That was like his hill he was going to die on. Now he's gone. What does Momi think?
Well, maybe I'll let Todd speak to that. I visited with Momi a little on the phone this morning. She said she has been talking to Todd about what the impacts of this are to the school.
Yeah, I spoke with her just after I think Doug spoke with her this morning. I think the challenge for us, and Momi recognizes this, is that as we're learning, the construction schedules aren't necessarily set in stone, and that we're dealing with all kinds of delays, and it's just making it almost impossible to plan well when a classroom will be open, when it'll be closed. So, there was this suggestion that there may be a classroom or a half a classroom that may open up in the transition, this first transition. Honestly, with some of the delays we're hearing about, that it's negligible. And so talking with her, she was comfortable saying, as long as we're able to adjust, as Doug suggested, to any kind of emergency circumstances that would necessitate a change, she's comfortable closing it for 1 year.
And is there any consideration to the fact that, like, there's still 250 open spots because that 10% is such a big number? I don't know what the fluctuation is. Probably it's similar because there's that size, but.
And one of the things that's hard to figure in this too is what you call an efficiency model that schools operate under. This is assuming that every teacher's teaching in those available classrooms every period of the day. You know that teachers have 1 or 2 prep periods, so you almost have to then say we're only really operating classes about at 80 or 85% of efficiency because there's empty classrooms with teachers in there prepping. So there is an aspect of saying kids are being shuffled other places. Then you can talk about kids that are released time and away from campus and so forth. So it's not an exact science to be able to say what the impact would be. That's why when you see these classroom numbers of high schools being at, let's say, 28.5, it's not very common you find classes in a high school at 28.5 because of lots of factors. But we just try and stick to this statistical certainty when we figure a school being open or closed. But you're right, the 10% is meant to be a pillow or a way to absorb move-ins that's more fair and equitable to someone who moves into the Timpview neighborhood.
And like that 28 number, I mean, there's a lot of classes with 35, 36,
yeah,
32.
right.
So, it's kind of, anyway.
Yeah, it's just a game of averages here we're playing for sure. And then on some places you'll have classes really small, right? That seem to balance that out.
Okay,
Jennifer?
so could you clarify?
Yes,
If we closed it to open enrollment,
Mhm.
anyone who's already there because of open enrollment would still get to go?
They would stay there, as well as the students who were already accepted on our open enrollment, say at Centennial Middle School. This would be new applications. We have an automatic way that, for instance, if someone joined the Chinese program at Wasatch, this is a scenario, and when they were accepted on open enrollment to be in the Chinese program, DLI program at Wasatch, they matriculate automatically through that whole system to Centennial, then to Timpview. They never reapply for open enrollment. So we're counting all those people that are already in the queue to move forward.
And what if we had someone who's already at Timpview on open enrollment and their younger sibling wants to apply and they're not already in our system? Would they have that opportunity?
That would be a consideration that we would explore as one of the conditions. And again, you can say specifically you want that as part of your discussion tonight. So that's a very nice thing for you to have anticipated, Jennifer, because that really is hard when I do with open enrollment, is splitting up families. What an inconvenience for them to have to be taking their kids on different parts of town, right? So we really try and exercise that sort of concession to families to keep their kids together when they desire to, right? Great point.
What if someone is really good at catching a football?
That was going to be my question. How many of these are athletic related?
Yes.
And do we want, I guess I should be asking you guys, how long are we going to continue bringing in hundreds of students to play football or basketball or whatever?
Look, they are getting a quality education. This is a fantastic opportunity to help.
Yeah, but there's also, you see the pictures of how crowded those hallways are.
But they won't be those hallways next year. Those hallways.
We can't anticipate that it's gonna open, we're hoping.
Maybe a few days. Maybe a few days. We
Nate's,
don't know.
I would like to remember Nate's leaving.
I hear those. I teach Sunday school, and I have 22 kids in my class, and we have a meet your board member twice a year, and they complain nonstop about those hallways. So I'm hearing it from the kids that they don't like the hallways.
I would invite any more discussion. I just want to be sensitive to the time for you, Melanie, as managing this. If you want to have some more discussion or more questions asked in the next meeting, I'll trust your
start
discretion.
here in a business meeting when we get to, after we do public input.
And my presentation, if you choose to on the Sharp survey, is just a really brief update because not a lot happened last week at the state board meeting. You probably saw the thing. We could probably handle that in a minute or less.
Yeah, so we still have a lot of things we still
Yeah.
need to cover, so we'll just start with any other further questions with you at that
Okay,
point.
thanks, Melanie.
And is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Okay.
Somebody else.
I'm scared.
Oh, yeah, so good.
I'm scared to do the first one.